Okay, good morning all. Am I audible to you? Yes, can you hear me? Can you respond? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm audible to you. So if you remember, we are discussing the module 4. And I said in module 4, we have to deal with project scheduling. Project scheduling is going to handle the constraint, which is the time constraint of the project. How to complete the project as per your schedule, well within the time. It requires a lot of planning, of course. Otherwise, it is not possible to complete within that time. So under that project scheduling, we have taken one class in which I talked about something called work breakdown structure, WBS. That is basically you are breaking down your whole project into some small package of work which are distinct, which are discrete, and which are identifiable, so that you can easily make the consequent plannings. You can identify the kind of resources which are used for those work packages or the activities, because they are of distinct nature, and it also helps us in planning and identifying the relationships among them. So when I'm saying relationships, these activities are dependent upon each other to some extent. They may be independent, but most of the cases they have some precedence relationship. You have to fulfill those relationships in your scheduled plans. So those things we have discussed by now. Let us proceed. As you can see in this slide, the heading given is project scheduling. So those things are mentioned that you have to split the project into various tasks and estimate the time and resources required to complete each task. This is also important. I told you that it is not only you have to break down the project into some small activities or tasks, but you also have to attach some time possible to proceed with the schedule, because that is a prerequisite. If you do not know what is the time you are going to take to complete one activity, how you can schedule it or how you can plan it. Of course, resources. Different activities require different types of resources, be it skilled manpower or machines or even materials. So different activities need different resources. So also you have to fix it that okay, for this activity these are the resources. Of course, that is not part of your project scheduling. Project scheduling only deals with the time dimension, not with the resource dimension. But once these project schedules are prepared, that can be used as a tool for planning of your resources also. So we will discuss that later, how there is something called resource allocation, resource labeling are performed based on the project schedules or network diagrams. So these are the project scheduling activities that you have to do. You have to split, you have to estimate the time, you have to organize the task concurrently to make the optimal use of the workforce, minimize task dependencies to avoid delays caused by one task waiting for, okay, if there is no pressing need to depend one activity on another, then why you will put that in your project scheduling? If it is technically required, that it has to depend. And then there is no other way. You have to, for example, you cannot start the brick wall until and unless you have your piling and foundation work is over. Because that is a technical constraint, that is a technical binding that you are having. Otherwise, maybe the doors and windows you can fabricate separately. It is not depending on any activities of your house building, right? Maybe some other activity we can do parallelly. So it's not necessary to make them depend on some activities. That is the point here. Okay, so this project scheduling and this splitting of the project into tasks, activities, estimation of the time, allocation of resource. As you can understand, there will not be any book or any guideline or any kind of a manual for that. It is completely depending on the project manager's experience, expertise, and his intuition to some extent, that how nicely you are planning these activities. So to begin with, the most basic tool, which is a graphical tool, the most basic tool which can be used for monitoring the progress of your project in terms of its time dimension is a bar chart, or it is also known as a Gantt chart. Gantt chart. You might have heard of these terms. They are very popular and very commonly used to understand the schedule of any activities. You might have used it maybe in some prior incidences. So bar chart or Gantt chart is the simplest form of project scheduling tool, but it has the limitation that it cannot represent a complex project nicely. It will become complicated to understand if there are many activities. At the same time, it has some limitations in terms of certain calculations which are possible in case of the network analysis, which we'll discuss later. So compared to that, bar chart has, or the Gantt chart has some limitation that you cannot conduct those computations, which helps us to understand the kind of freedom, kind of leniency the various activities provide to us in terms of their completion time. So bar chart is a very static picture of your project plans, project schedule. And even if there is some change that happens on in the real time, it is very difficult to incorporate those changes into the bar chart. So let us see what is a bar chart. Today I have just planned to discuss this particular tool of project scheduling. So the attendance is also less today. I don't know why, but yes, only 38 students are there. So it is better. I'll just be limited to today's topic, that is about this project scheduling using bar charts or Gantt charts. So it is a graphical notations are used to illustrate the project schedule. It shows the project breakdown into tasks, which is the WBS. Tasks should not be too small. Okay. A bar chart shows schedule against calendar time. Right. So in one axis, you have to put your calendar time, maybe depending on the time scale that is convenient for that project. If the project is taking maybe some days, right? The project is going to be completed within some days, 5-6 days. So maybe the time scale that you will use on the x-axis may be days. Or if the project may be represented in hours, because the project is a very small one, and you are going to complete the whole project within few hours. So you can use hours, or you can use weeks or months, depending on the time scale that is appropriate for that kind of project. Okay, so let us begin with one example. Again, this example is related with a project which is a construction of a residential house. Because it's an example which most of us can relate. We have some idea about what are the various activities that used to happen in case of a construction of a house, and what are the dependencies or kind of precedence relationships that exist compared to some highly technical projects like projects of some plants or industries or some other complicated projects. We may not be able to understand that easily what are the activities and what are the precedence lies. So here, just look at the left-hand side column. We are mentioning something like the activity ID. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and the description of the activity, that's the activity name. And here you can see the yellow blocks or yellow columns. They represent some kind of WBS that you have done, right? WBS is that work breakdown structure. You have divided your whole project of construction of the house into, let us say, these five main WBS that are groundworks, structure, finishing works, electrical works, and mechanical works. And you have further divided under each WBS category some subdivisions which are related to that WBS. For example, under the groundworks, you have excavation, then backfill and compaction. Right? So these two activities. Now, WBS 1, the groundworks is not an activity, but excavation is an activity. That is activity ID 1, right? Although it is falling under groundworks, right? So the way you have divided it may help you to allocate resources or maybe to subcontract. Suppose you have given subcontract to the groundworks WBS to some different, third party. You have outsourced that work, so it will be easy for them that they will take care of the excavation and they will take care of the backfill. Backfill means it may be happening after the completion of the house. You have to fill the it will look nice and it will be a kind of livable. One is the excavation and second one is the filling of that foundation that you have did after the work is completed, and some compaction. Right? Similarly, you have divided the structural works into reinforced concrete works, right? The preparation of the RCC structure, the roof, right? Or maybe at the lintel level, and all those things which are happening that are coming under the structural works, even the steel works, right? So you are using the steel rods in the RCC or any other structure, and the works which deals with those steel rods, etc. That is also coming under the second WBS, that is structural works. But you have divided the activities now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, they are the activities. So then wall plastering of the wall after construction of the brick walls using cements. Then maybe some painting work, right? You will have to use some different coatings and everything, and the painting works. Then the floor covering work, right? The floor of the house need to be cemented as well, maybe tiled or something, depends. Floor covering. So all these are coming under finishing works. Then another division, as you can see, this WBS are just combining the works which are of some kind of similarity in them. Suppose electrical works. So there you have used the conduit works and the cable pulling, etc., which are related to some electrical functions, right? And finally, the mechanical works where you will have the water supply pipes and all that will be fixed into the walls and into the the bathrooms, etc., the various fittings and plumbing works. So according to that, again, I can see this division is based on your own expertise, your own knowledge about the project. If somebody does not have the know-how of this project, then you can see it will not be that easy to divide or make this WBS to be useful. Okay. Now coming to this right hand side table, okay, kind of matrix. This is called something called the precedence matrix, and we are going to use this kind of tables or matrices in the coming classes more often. The reason is that this represents the relationship and the time estimates attached with each and every activity. So you can see there are 12 activities which are identified in the construction of a house project, right? So if you are going to complete the house project, you have to complete these 12 activities, right? Separately. All these 12 activities need to be completed. But in what order? Right? That is important. That is important. You cannot start with activity 12 or 11 at the first. It's not technically possible because of the thing I told you. There are some technical requirements and limitations that you have to obey those precedence relationships to complete a project. So those relationships or those dependencies are also marked here. You can see the last column of this precedence matrix or precedence table, which tells us the dependency, right? Dependency. So to begin with, activity one. Activity one takes, okay, the time scale used in this project is weeks, right? So you are comfortable with weeks. So again, as I said, depending on the total time the project is going to take and the individual activities are going to take. So based on that, you will select some time scale. You may say any other time scale can be used. Of course, it can be used, but it is just your convenience. For example, in case of weeks, you can write days. No harm. No harm. You can write days, but again, you have to write 7 days here, 14 days, and then 21 days, like that. So if you are finding the activities are being completed not in weeks but by days, it's better to use days units, of course. So that is the unit of scale that you will use on the x-axis of this Gantt chart that you are going to prepare. So in this case, it is weeks. So activity one, that is the excavation of the foundation, is going to take 1 week. That you have estimated somehow. You have estimated based on your experience, based on inputs from experts or the people who already deal with this kind of tasks. So you have to use these times in your projects. So it is going to take 1 week. Of course, it's not depending on any other activities out of the rest 11 activities. So dependency, there is no dependency. So there is a dash there. Now coming to activity 2, which is backfill and compaction, right? Backfill and compaction. So here you have to see technical things, right? Backfill and compaction is the activity which you are doing after some time when some of the works are completed in the house construction. And as you can see here, the dependency marked here is 5. Means activity 5. Now let us see what is activity 5. Activity 5 is marked here as bricklaying. Bricklaying. So bricklaying means the construction of the brick walls, right? So the process is after digging the foundation, you have to maybe fill that foundation with some piling work, some cement work, you have to use some steel rods, etc. As much I know. Then after that, you level it, right? After leveling it, you can start the construction of the brick walls, right? Once the brick walls are completed, right, then you are free to fill up those vacant space which are to the both side of your brick wall in the foundation, because there's no need to make it remain open So that's why for the activity 2, the dependency marked is 5. Technically, it is found that okay, after bricklaying, we can fill the fill that foundation, and we can make the compaction also, right? So you will use some kind of pressure tools to make it compact, and that's it. So that is activity 2. Similarly, if we proceed, you can see the various activities and their corresponding durations are marked. Right? All of you are able to hear me? Someone please respond. Okay. So what I was telling that you can check that rest of the activities are marked as the activity numbers, or you can mention the description of the activity, and then the duration of that particular activity, the estimated duration, of course, and then some dependence. As you can see, all the activities here, except activity 1, is having some kind of dependency. Right? It is not necessary that always there will be one dependency. There can be more than one dependency also practically. Right? Yeah, maybe you cannot do the plastering until and unless your walls are completed, as well as your plumbing and electrical fittings are done. Maybe so there can be one or maybe more than one kind of dependency that can be happen. But in this example that I'm showing here, it is a coincidence. I mean, it is a matter of chance that most of these activities, all of these activities are having a single dependency. It can be more than one also. That also you can cater to in case of these project scheduling approach, either using this Gantt chart, bar chart, or any other network model. But here we are finding there is only one single dependency. Let me pick some other activity just to explain it for you. For example, let us say activity 9, right? Activity 9 is conduit works, right? Something related with electrical works, right? Maybe some in the wall, some conduit will form, some kind of passage, I guess, and through which those electrical cables, wires will be laid out. So for that work, that is activity 9, it takes 3 weeks of time, and it depends on 4, right? It depends on activity 4. Once the steel works are complete, right, then only you can start this conduit work. So again, it is purely technical. The restriction is purely technical, and based on which the project manager or the project planner has to get the idea of all activities and their dependency. Now let us see how the Gantt chart for this particular program is constructed. Yes, in the next slide. Yes. So this is the bar chart or the Gantt chart. As I said, you must have some experience of this kind of scale charts earlier also. Somewhat like this. In the left, you are mentioning the various activities, right? The same thing, their activity code, number, ID, and the description of the activity. And towards the right, you are using a time scale. Maybe you can use some graph paper or any kind of divided kind of paper or scale to represent in Excel sheet or something like that. So you can see here simply you are setting the areas which are representing those activities. Right? You can hatch it, you can set it. It all depends on your kind of decoration you want, but it is a means of a graphical means of a representation of your future plans with respect to the schedule of the project. Right? So as you can see here, along the row which represents the excavation, it starts from week 0 and completed after the completion of week 1. So the time scale is in weeks. So it is just a green block you can see, that is for activity 1, excavation. Right. Now if we look the activity 2, which was a backfill and compaction. If you remember, we discussed it that it can only start after the completion of activity. Which activity? Bricklayer, right? Activity 5. Right. So activity 5, you can see, go to activity 5. It is completing somewhere after the end of week 13, right? Week 13. Now, one of the very useful information now we are getting after construction of this Gantt chart is that. Can you tell me what is the most most useful information which you are getting after construction of this Gantt chart compared to only this table? Suppose I am giving you this table, right? This data. Compared to this data, when you are completing construction of this Gantt chart, what is the most basic and useful information you are able to get? Anyone? No, you are going bit deeper into the analysis. See, I'm just at
Sir,
the first
common
look.
weeks in the finishing works.
Again, it is also a bit more analysis or more visual, more study of the chart also. But just at the first look, you are getting very vital information out of this, which is not possible by looking at the matrix earlier. Just I want to know, can you guess what is that? Okay, I think you are not able to get it. See, the most vital information that you are getting after just completion of this chart is that you can now get to know when this project will get completed, isn't it? Look at the extreme activity which is getting finished at the end of week 21. But by just looking at this table, can anyone guess that when this project will get completed? Nobody can guess by looking at this table only. No one can guess, right? Because there are overlapping of activities. You just cannot add these activity durations to know what is the project completion time. You will get it wrong because there are simultaneous activities, right? So that you can only get once you are completing the construction of this Gantt chart or this bar chart. This is the most vital, most basic information that you can get out of this. When this project will get completed, okay, 21 weeks I am going to take, isn't it? Okay, so that is one thing. After that, the kind of things you said, you analyzed and said are right. You can look into this chart in a detailed manner and you can see which are the activities which are happening simultaneously, right? And what kind of resources you need when you are carrying out these simultaneous activities, because you need to do uh, all the multiple activities simultaneously. So according to that, you have to plan, right? You can see what are the time periods in which you are in a lean period. Lean periods means the work tasks or the activities are less compared to some of the weeks. For example, if I pick the weeks like 12, right, or maybe 14th, right? You can see many activities are happening during those weeks compared to weeks like 4, 5, right? There is only one activity is going on. So this graphical tool is definitely telling us, and you will see this kind of Gantt charts which are very easy to construct in any project, being hanging from the chamber or office of the project managers, or you visit any real estate project office, you will find some Gantt chart like this is hanging. Even the student projects, if you visit these projects which are making these cars, that your what you call that, Firebolt or some other projects, you will find that they also have, I have seen these kind of Gantt charts being hanging from their walls. Because it is very useful, because at the first look only you can see, okay, now we are at a particular time. Suppose this is the 10th week. This is the 10th week we are passing through from the start, beginning of the project. So it is expected that our steel work must be at the middle of completion. Our maybe the bricklaying maybe also at the middle of its completion. So at that time, at that exact time when you are making this analysis, you can see whether it is as per the schedule, whether our steel work is at the middle of completion, whether our bricklaying is at the middle of the completion. If it is not, you are lagging behind, or maybe you are far ahead. It cannot be possible also. It depends. So it is really very useful, and anyone without much training or much knowledge can also monitor the progress of the project by picking up any particular week and see how the progress is there and what are the activities which are left ahead of the project and all that. So these are the advantages of Gantt chart. Very easy to construct and very easy to analyze and interpret because it's graphically made. So what are the demerits? What are the demerits? The demerits, as I said earlier, it's not very dynamic in nature, right? Dynamic in the sense, suppose some activities get delayed, and it usually happens. Some activity get delayed. Now, how to incorporate that in the Gantt chart? Once one activity is getting delayed, suppose just bricklaying get delayed. So you have to extend that. Maybe you will have another 1 or 2 blocks in it, right? But at the same time, it will affect the backfill and compaction activity also, because that is depending on that. So whenever some activity get delayed, either delayed or completed prior to its completion time, in either way it can happen, it is going to affect the subsequent activities, and it is very difficult to make the changes in the already constructed Gantt chart because it will become clumsy, or I can say it will become not easily readable if we make a lot of changes into it, right? So in that sense, it becomes a kind of static tool. It's not able to incorporate any kind of dynamic nature which actually happens in case of actual project implementations, right? Because you cannot be certain that, okay, this activity will be completed within this date exactly, and then it will start. So there are some uncertainties, as you know, and this Gantt chart after some time may become irrelevant because of these reasons, because things are not happening as per a plan. So the Gantt chart becomes a kind of irrelevant to you after some time, right? It's not able to incorporate the kind of changes that is happening in your project implementation. So these are the demerits of project. Okay, so I think I'll stop here today. We'll continue with the rest of the discussions from the next class. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Okay then, so I'll stop here.